Welcome to Ink and Flame. I'm your host, Tina Kutras, and today we're sitting down with Hope Cole, H.R. Cole, to talk about her book, Daughter of the Void. Hi, Hope. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited.
Awesome. We're excited to chat with you. Where are you located?
I am in upstate New York, far, far away from the city. It's very important to upstate New Yorkers that we distinguish that. We love the city, but we have a lot of mountains and farmland up here that separates us.
Nice. You're not far away from me. I'm in Nova Scotia, so it's
Oh, okay.
yeah, we're stone's throw across the ocean.
That's right.
I mean, a really far stone's throw, but you know. So, welcome to the podcast. I guess to get started, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how your love of fantasy got started?
Sure. I mean, looking back on it, I would say it was kind of inevitable. My mom is very creative, probably one of the most creative people that I know, honestly. And her imagination is unparalleled. It is just, even to this day, she creates these fantastical like sculptures, and she's a painter, and she plays the accordion, and she's just a very artsy person. And so my childhood was very filled with whimsy and magic, and there was always a handmade puppet theater somewhere that she was making to, so we could live out fairy tales. Or, in the winter, she would go outside and we would make these elaborate like snow dragons and, castles. And my brothers weren't immune to it either. And then when they got older, they played Dungeons and Dragons, and then I played Dungeons and Dragons. So it just, I don't know, I was born into it. So here I am now.
Wow, that sounds magical.
It truly was.
It kind of seems a little bit like the beginning of a movie.
Right?
So cool. So you wrote your first novel when you were just 12 years old. Do you remember what it was about and what it was like?
I do. So it filled about 3 diary sized little journals. And I wrote it for my oldest brother. And I had always I loved reading, and writing comes naturally with that, I think, a lot of the time. And writing became like my love language. So anybody I cared about, I would put them in a story. I would make them the main character that they really wanted to be. Do you want to have a sword and shield? Do you want to be an epic wizard? Tell me what you would pick for yourself, and I will write you into that. And I did it for my brother first. He got the book, and then up into high school, I did it for my friends. I would sit in the back of the bus and I would just crank out handwritten stories, and my friends were the main characters. It was just a way for me to, showcase them in a way that they really wanted to be showcased. They were heroes in my life. It was cool to make them heroes in a story.
Wow, it sounds like you were a born dungeon master for Dungeons and Dragons. That's cool.
Maybe.
Have you ever played the game?
I have, definitely. With my brothers were big into it, and that was, back in the 80s. So
Yeah.
I grew up with it, and even when my nieces and nephews were older, we got them into it, and that was probably the most fun I had, was playing it as an adult. Because once you know the game, and you watch people who don't really know what to expect get involved with it, and you kind of guide them and influence their decisions. I play devil's advocate a little bit. It was really, really fun. I still love it to this day.
Me too. I played it a lot when we were young, and my husband and I met playing D&D, and
Oh, nice. That's
yeah,
great.
so it's fun when I get to chat with people who actually played the game and know it very well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We were, the original. We had the dungeon books, and there were no. Now it's elaborate. Now people have computer
Full on screens,
Yes,
yeah.
there was none of that when we played. You had a paper and a pencil and
Yeah, with
markers
all the
to
little
play.
octagons on the screen.
That's right.
That's awesome. So how do you feel that those stories that you wrote when you were young may have influenced your writing now?
I think they just naturally kept the love of it alive for me. You know, as you get older and responsibilities come into your life, a lot of times the things that you do creatively fall to the wayside. And it was really helpful. One day I actually came across like a notebook of these stories, and I was like, oh man, like I missed it. And at that point in my life, you're just busy. You work, you come home, you make dinner, you go to sleep. And sometimes there's just not enough bandwidth in your brain to be creative. So I think the fact that I had those to look back at really motivated me to continue with it as an adult.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like to some degree, like I'm retired from the military now and I kind of did my young children life and now I get to kind of do my own thing a lot more and I'm reading more and writing more and doing me more. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, and it's so important. It really is
It
very
really
important.
is. And it's really hard to keep doing it when you've got all of these other things tugging and pulling you away. So it's awesome that you were able to keep those books and to keep that light alive. So, your career managing a veterinarian hospital before transitioning into writing, how did that switch happen?
Oh boy. So I equally love animals and I equally love, writing. I just happened to choose animals as my first career path. And I still love animals, passionate about, the companionship they provide and how they enrich our lives. But the veterinary industry is not for the meek. It is not all holding kittens and puppies, like, even though you do get to do that. Excuse me. It is very emotionally demanding. And the clinic that I worked for, we were the kind of like the abuse case hub for the local police force. So anytime one of those cases came through, we would get the animal. And I just, after so many years of seeing kind of the worst of what people can do to an innocent creature, my heart couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, well, unfortunately, the schooling for veterinary technology is very, very niche. So if you don't do that field, there's not too much else you can do with it. But it does give you a really nice medical base. And I was like, well, maybe it's time I just embrace my writing. And so I started freelancing on the medical side of things.
Okay. I think I saw that in your Goodreads. I remember reading that. That's wild. So, what did that look like for you?
It was not easy. A lot of freelance writing work is reputation based. So you have to build that. And that means taking a lot of low paying jobs at a really high volume and just kind of grinding through the work. Um, but you do enough of it, and slowly the projects get a little bit better, and the companies that are interested in you get a little bit larger. And I ended up connecting with a wonderful lady who, to this day, is still an editor that I work with, and we're talking 10+ years ago.
Oh, nice.
And she kind of took me under her wing and was like, this is the format that all of these health articles are generated in. Uses very conscious language, and you're basically converting complex ideas down to an easier to understand format for everybody. And she showed me the ropes, and then I ran with it. And I am passionate about wellness and mental and physical wellness in my regular lives. It was something I was already interested in. And when you're interested in something, it makes it easy to learn, which is to this day, again, very helpful. So everything I write about, I'm just so fascinated by. Like, some of the things the human mind and body are capable of is just astounding.
Powerful, yeah. So that brings us to our next question that your bio mentions that your creative work often tackles some inner dialogues about self-worth and insecurities. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you focus on those themes?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I struggle with those every day of my life. It has been an ongoing battle of mine. And I know that there are many, many people who face challenges with that. And it is important to me because I've worked so hard on it for myself personally
Yeah.
that I feel there's a real opportunity to help people, even if it's just a little bit of, hey, I relate to this, when you create a character. We all love like the really strong badass like main characters, and that is fantastic. And sometimes, you know what, you crave that. You just kind of want the character to come in and just beat down all the doors. But I think it's important to have relatable journeys and realistic journeys, and these are issues that so many people grapple with, that I think that when I wrote this book, and honestly most of the short stories and other things I've written, it's just something that's really important to me. So I want to feature it in some way in the things that I write.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's awesome. And I commend you for it because it needs to be out there, I think. It's all well and good, like you said, to have the badass every now and again, but relatability, I think a lot of people turn to reading for that reason.
Right. right? And the realism is important too for me. You know, you can have a character that ends up super overpowered and just really awesome, but how did they get there? You know, were
Yeah.
they sometimes they're born that way. I have read some amazing books where the character just comes out swinging and they're, you know, that's just who they are. That's who destiny made them to be. But from a real world point of view, we are who we are right now sitting here today is a culmination of all of our experiences in life. And you know, sometimes it's trial by fire, a lot of times it's trial
Yeah.
by fire for almost everyone, I think, in some way, shape, or form. And so I wanted it to be realistic, the journey to be realistic.
Yeah, so let's talk about Daughter of the Void a little bit. For the those unfamiliar, can you share a quick sort of elevator pitch or concept of what your book is about?
I can, but you know, there's memes about this. It's like there's all those memes where they're like, "Give us a quick explanation of your book," and the author just is like, "Oh no."
Yeah, I know.
But
There's a reason why they teach the skill.
oh my gosh, it's the worst part. It's the worst part of the whole
Yes, it is.
process. But
But it's because we say elevator pitch instead of just what's your book about?
right, right. I know it's like condense it down. But Daughter of the Void, excuse me, is it's a romantasy adventure, but I'm gonna say it's more of a romantic fantasy, which means, you know, in the spectrum of romantasy, there's romantic fantasy means that the fantasy story can kind of stand alone. The romance is there and it's a strong component, but the fantasy story is there whether the romance is there or not. Now, in a the other end of the spectrum, it's the romance that's central to the plot. So, Daughter of the Void, I would say, it's more on the romantic fantasy spectrum of romantasy.
Okay.
But it's about you have your main character. Her name is Raylan, and she's pretty naive in the beginning. And she, you know, she comes off as not spoiled, but she's never had to survive. You know, she grows up in a castle, and unbeknownst to her, she's actually what's called a warden, and that's a very rare person who has the ability to kind of unravel magic. And unfortunately for Raylan, she doesn't find this out until she inadvertently causes her home to go up in flames and her best friend gets kidnapped, and then she finds herself lost in the mountains with this really grumpy mage who he's pretty handsome, but he's still pretty grumpy. And she's being hunted. She's got gods and mages and monsters on her tail, and all of it, the premise is that she's being kind of steered towards this inescapable fate, right? And so, what I really wanted readers to grapple with is Raylan doesn't want this. She doesn't want what seems to be pretty laid out, like, well, you're a warden, so you're going to end up, this is right, you have to end up at this endpoint. And she doesn't want that, but she does see the importance in that. And so, you kind of follow her along, and you're supposed to stay wondering throughout the whole series, like, is fate actually going to make her this, or will she be able to change her destiny?
Okay. Interesting. So you said gods and everything are on her tail.
Yeah.
She's having a bad day.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Many bad days, unfortunately.
So the novel is part of the Chains of Fate trilogy. What's the driving force or central idea behind this series?
I wanted people to really explore the concepts of destiny and fate. A lot of times those terms are used interchangeably, but if you want to look at the nuances of it, fate is kind of it's inescapable, right? It's that end game, that's where you're ending up, like this was your fate. Destiny is a little more forgivable. You know, if you're destined, say, for greatness, there's a lot of different paths you can take to get there, even if that's your destiny. So, destiny is a little more flexible. So, that's what I really wanted to explore. People have very personal beliefs, whether, you know, are things predetermined? Like, do we have free will? And so, I wanted you to really wonder, like, does free will exist in this world? Like, can Raylan influence her destiny, or is she fated to this particular outcome?
Yeah. Interesting. So your protagonist faces a lot of challenges that forge her inner growth. How does this character's arc mirror some of the themes that you're passionate about, the self-discovery and the resilience and some of the things you mentioned earlier?
I think that again, I really wanted realistic growth for her. And I think that resilience and personal growth they're just important, right? They're important for all of us. And I wanted to show the stages of that a little bit. Everybody has their own process, and not everybody goes through it. Some people don't ever move above and beyond the position that they're in, and that's fine. But if you want to move and grow personally, you have to be uncomfortable. Okay, we have to step out of our comfort zones. And Raylan is an extreme situation because she's obviously, like it's a trial by fire, right? She's thrown in there, like chaos is happening. She doesn't really have a choice.
Yeah,
But she's going through hardships, and hardships in life happen to all of us, and you have a choice. When you're faced with a hardship, you either use it and become better for it, or you kind of get stuck and you let it dictate how you live your life. And I
exactly.
wanted people to see I wanted people to see her choices and show how she goes from being this kind of naive, sheltered, but kind character into a force to be reckoned with, but who's also maintained her kindness, because you don't have to sacrifice that for personal growth. And that was
Very true.
important to me as well.
Yeah, very true. So the world building in Daughter of the Void is incredible. What inspired the setting, and how did you go about creating such a vivid and immersive world?
This is a fun one for me because it has such a strange like secondary hobby. I love astronomy and theoretical physics, and so it's weird to think that a fantasy world was born from something very science centered in our world.
Yeah,
But I've always been really compelled by the concept of the seen and the unseen world. We have concepts of like antimatter and dark matter and black holes and space, and there's a lot going on that we don't know about. And so yeah, I wanted to incorporate the seen and unseen aspects of our world. And to do that in a fantasy world, you have to think a little bit outside of the box. So a central part of the story is the magic system. And I was using the idea, toying with the idea of antimatter, the counterpart to a particle of matter is its antimatter. And I was like, well, in our science, it doesn't really all pan out if I wanted to, apply it in a magical system because everything would just explode. But then I was like, well, but it would be really neat if everything that existed had kind of like a shadow of magic, or like these threads that represent the unseen part of it, and that's the magic. So rather than a power, so to speak, it just exists. It's just the unseen part of the seen world.
so whether or not a person is able to tap into that.
Right, that's the ability. That's where mages come in, and those are people who are born with the ability to not only see it, but manipulate it. And they're able to basically take these loose tendrils, this shadow around an object, and reform it into something tangible. So it makes the magic system, it keeps it from being a little overpowered too, because something a lot of readers critique as well, if you can use magic or just solve all your problems. Well, if you in Daughter of the Void, the magic you have to specialize. So if you want to learn how to reform, the magic around a stone, you have to learn that, and that takes a lot of time. And then, there's so many other things you could learn, but you just don't have the time to do it. So it kind of grounds the magic system a little bit and prevents it from being that just like calling lightning bolts out of the sky and just, blasting enemies, out to
Right.
smithereens.
So it's funny because people who are familiar with Dungeons and Dragons already have a grasp of the rules of magic. And it's very interesting to see how you've altered that because of the fact that, I'm not saying that everybody that writes with a neat background of Dungeons and Dragons writes magic the same as the way it is in Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a little bit more common to follow the same kind of rule sets or be kind of ground into them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas yours, I think that's a very unique stance. You still have
Thank
the
you.
same sort of concept of specializing and having to take the time to learn and how that impacts the person's growth. But very unique. I love that. That's so cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, are there any particular tropes or conventions in fantasy that you've intentionally embraced or avoided in your book?
I would say not intentionally. I gravitate towards the enemies to lovers just because that's what I love to read myself.
Mm-hmm.
but there were no tropes that I avoided. I think any trope can be done really, really well and uniquely, you know. I'm not, as a reader, I wouldn't say that there's anything I'm like, oh, I can't, you know, I can't read that. I'm pretty open to most things. But the enemies to lovers is just, it's fun. It's really fun to write. You get to write all this tension. And, you know, I think the emotional payoff is really good for readers when you have that kind of like clashing in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see people, they might not necessarily root for the pairing. And I think that's fun. It's fun to see, like, and I have had readers be like, I don't know, like, you know, I don't know if I'm Team Laris. He's the main male character. And then other people are like, I loved him right from the first page. And so it's really fun to see readers react.
Cool. When I first started writing, I actually didn't know anything about tropes. Same with reading. I was, long done ACOTAR and Throne of Glass and Crescent City, and people were talking about tropes, and I didn't even know what they were. I was just enjoying the story for what it was. So I can totally see, the indifference between following a trope. It just does, you just go where the story goes.
Right. And I didn't write this book. I didn't write to market, as they say. Like, I didn't sit down. I was like, the romantasy is really hot right now. I need to write a romantasy book.
Yeah.
I just had this really like cool idea, and I sat down and I wanted to write it out. And so the tropes insert themselves, I think, when you write that way. And you know, I don't, I think people are a little hard on trope hating, if I'm being honest. Like,
Yeah.
I've read some fantastic stories, and it could be a paper copy of Lord of the Rings. Like, people
Yeah.
critique stories for being too Tolkien-esque, and it's like, they're beautiful. They're beautiful stories on their own. I don't think we should be so harsh.
Yeah, they're recipes. And,
Right.
every good story follows one recipe or another, or there wouldn't be
Right.
books written about how
Exactly.
to do it.
Right, exactly.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the chains of fate concept?
Right. It is about being chained to fate. And I think I want people to explore their personal beliefs. Like, you're journeying with Raylan, and you're gonna see where in the world I created, if things are fated, or if you can change your destiny. You know, you're gonna find that out. But I want people to question their own lives a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's important, right? It's important to feel like you have a sense of control and that you can change your circumstances. One of my favorite quotes, and unfortunately, I don't really know where it originated from, but it's, you're always one decision away from totally changing your life. And that is so true and so important to remember. And so if you were to ask me, I don't believe in fate. Maybe destiny. I do think that, you know, some people are born with certain gifts that make them geared towards a certain profession, or, you know, fantastic public speakers, or they just kind of find their way into those grooves, and maybe that is destiny. But I personally don't believe that anything's set in stone.
I agree. So, how do you feel like these literal or metaphorical chains shape the story and its characters?
In the book,
Yeah, yes, back to your book.
so I'm trying to think about how not to give anything too much away.
You could quite literally say pass. I can't answer that.
Yeah, you know what? Let's skip that one, because I want to keep it really open, and I don't want to sway anybody. I want people to find out organically.
Yeah, they got to find out whether or not it's fate or destiny on their own, right?
Yes.
So, writing a fantasy novel requires balancing a lot of elements in your story, like characters and world building. What's your process for weaving these pieces together?
Oh boy. I have a lot of notebooks. I mean, spiral notebooks, and I'd love to tell you they're organized and stacked neatly, but they most certainly are not. And I am, you know what? I admit that I was what the internet calls a pantser, apparently, where
Mm-hmm.
you just write by the seat of your pants.
Yep.
I was that, and I was committed to that. Like, if you had asked me back in those days, I would be like, of course, like, outlines, please. Like, but I have converted.
After a few rewrites, it tends to
Yes.
happen.
Yes. And when things start getting complex, it's important. You gotta know where you're going and where you've been. Otherwise, you're rereading and hunting for things. You're like, I know I wrote that in there somewhere. And so yes, now I outline, and I outline a lot. And when I get stuck, I outline even more. So sometimes the story does, like, I'll be writing and it will just take a turn naturally. My pantser days are mostly behind me.
My ultimate pantser moment was writing the book about one set of characters, getting a long way into the book and realizing that that's not the book I wanted to be writing, and completely altering it and making it about a completely different character.
Sounds about right.
So I did an interview with Maddie Rose Andre. She's the writer of Mortal End. It was actually my second interview. And she showed me her wall behind her. And it was like she was in the loft where she writes. And the whole back wall was black chalkboard painted, the whole wall. Like it was massive.
Wow.
And she had all of her plots and lines of stuff. So she was the
Wow.
extreme in the
Yeah, I
opposite
was gonna
direction.
say that's wow, good for her. That
She
is
had it nailed
impressive.
down. Yeah, for
That is
sure.
impressive. Someday
There's room for
maybe.
all of us, though.
Right, right.
Your characters often grapple with feelings of insecurity and find strength through challenges. How does your own life and experience inform these things?
This is such an important topic. It's my favorite topic out of everything. People need to challenge themselves. You have to do hard things. Uh, and I mean, I could get up on a soapbox about this for days, but the important thing is you don't know what you're capable of until you test yourself. And when you test yourself, most of the time you're pretty surprised at what you can accomplish. And what that helps people do is it helps build self agency, the ability to, when you're called to action, can you create a plan, start that plan, carry it through, and do you have the confidence that you can do this, whatever it is? And if you don't challenge yourself, you won't build the confidence to have self agency in your life. It's just for me. I'll give you an example. So my husband and we have a variety of athletic hobbies. He decided that he was going to do an Ironman, which is a very long format type of triathlon. And I was not going to do that, but I agreed to do a lesser triathlon at a much more manageable distance. What I didn't know until I started training for it was that I had a crippling fear of open water. And I was having panic attacks trying to train in the lake. But I was signed up. I was going to do it. And I mean, I'm talking even the day before on our practice swim, like crying in the lake, like not being able to, like I just could not do it. But I went the next day to the triathlon site and I put my wetsuit on and I got in the water and I was dead last. And I had a panic attack out about halfway through. And thankfully the venue was really just athlete friendly. There were no time cutoffs and I panicked, but I did it. And then the worst part was you had to get out. So you swam, like they portioned the swim off so that you did a lap, you ran along the beach, you did your next lap. So not only did I have the panic attack on the first lap, but I had to get out where I felt safe, run across the beach, and force myself to get back in the water for another half mile of panic attack swimming. But I did it. And I said to myself, I don't have to do this. I can quit at any time. But for me, swimming is what I consider to be an important life skill, at least in my life. And it's like, what if I had to save somebody? What if something happened? I needed to be in the open water. I need to know that I can do this. And so I did it. And I've done it now for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
I don't have panic attacks anymore, I'm happy to say, but I do not enjoy the swimming part. I can do it. And I think that people need to challenge themselves on that level. I think you need to really step out of your comfort zone, like really test yourself. Like, what are you made of? Like, when push comes to shove, like, do you have and can you build what you need, to get through? And the answer is yes. And if you don't have it now, you can build it. But You don't know, do you have it or not, unless you try.
So I have to ask, if you're okay with answering it, how old were you when you did your first triathlon?
Let's see, 39.
Amazing. Good for you. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, and honestly, anybody who wants to like get into triathlon, it's very age friendly. I mean, there is this one gentleman who's there every year. I think he's in his upper 70s, and he crushes all of us. Just
Yeah.
absolutely crushes all of us. And he's smiling. He's got this wave, like he'll wave when he passes you, and he'll encourage you, which is he just like, "Oh, you're doing great," as he just merrily
Laps you.
goes on his way. Yeah.
That's amazing. I almost feel like I want my son to hear some of this. He's always wanted to do triathlon, so that's awesome.
I definitely recommend them.
So, you've worked in both medical journalism and creative writing. How do these two disciplines compare, and did one help shape the other?
I think at first it seems like they're probably pretty dissimilar, and they are as far as style of writing goes. Health journalism, it's very a lot of medical terminology, and there's certain style choices you make to help convey topics to the readers. Whereas creative writing, you're like, it felt like a spring rain on, you could
Yeah.
be really poetic with your words. But I will say that the health writing has really supported character development in the creative writing. A lot of what I write about is psychology and mental health related, and it teaches you why people kind of do the things they do, or the traits that nature versus nurture and all of that. So it helps you create really complex characters. And it was really helpful. The villain, the antagonist in Daughter of the Void, she's what they call a sympathetic villain. So she does some pretty awful things, but as a reader, you kind of get where she's coming from. And I think that that's such a cool exploration of a character, because it's like you get to ask yourself, well, if that had happened to me, like, would I also,
Yeah.
be going this path, or would I take maybe a more morally high road? But you're kind of rooting for her because you're like, yeah, they've got that coming to them, but so the health writing has supported the character development in that way.
I imagine when you do some fight scenes, you've got some pretty good, some basis of understanding of how the body mechanics work during those.
Yes, it definitely helps with that. Just general, biology. But the fight scenes are fun because my husband and I actually we met doing mixed martial arts. And I was a fighter, not professional, just amateur, and he was a professional fighter. And so yes, you pull little tidbits of real life from that realm as well. Mm-hmm.
So, what has been the most surprising or rewarding aspects of transitioning to a full time writer?
I would say honestly the schedule flexibility. I love being home. I am a homebody. I'm just like, you know what? Give me like I don't know if you've ever played Magic the Gathering, but
Mhm.
as a D&D player maybe that rings a bell. But give me some fun card game or something with my husband, and I'm okay to be at home. So the fact that I get to write from home, whether it's the health journalism or the creative writing, is just such a blessing. It also gives me time for things like, if my mom needs to go to a doctor's appointment, or, sometimes it's just a beautiful day and you want to step outside and, have a coffee on the porch.
Guilty.
Yes, it's nice to be able to take that, 5 or 10 minute window. Honestly, I feel like people are happier in general. Like I know there's been some crazy things happening since COVID, when we all did get to work from home, and then people were switched back into their office settings. Like
And
it
didn't want
wasn't
to be.
was not the best thing for mental health. Let's just say that.
Yeah. All right. Every writer faces obstacles. Were there any tough moments during writing Daughter of the Void? And how did you push through them?
Yeah, I took an 8-year break.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, like I said, like life just, it wears you down. And at that point in time, I was working 7 days a week, like 12-hour days. And I just didn't have it in me, like to be on the computer. I came home and I laid on the couch.
Yeah.
And then, the longer you stay away from it, the harder it is to come back. And it actually wasn't until a friend of mine reached out to me, and she had been writing, and she's just so passionate about her own writing that it reignited that flame a little bit to get me going again. But yeah, it was a long break, and I don't know if she hadn't sent me that message one day, hey, can you read this blurb that I've got. And it kicked off. I mean, we're going on a year's worth of writing specific conversations at this point. So yeah, I'm grateful for that because it's easy. It's easy to let our self-care things fall to the wayside, right? When responsibilities creep in, you got to do the dishes, you got to do the laundry, you got to, like all of these things that you got to do. It's easy to just sacrifice those, like, oh, I don't need to sit down and watch this show I like, or I don't need to write because even though I love writing, I don't have to do it today. So it's important, I think, to have people in your life who remind you of those things that you're passionate about.
Yeah, I feel like you're talking to me right now.
Everybody, I'm talking to everybody. We are all guilty of it. We self sacrifice to the point where we tank our mental health. And it is just, it is okay. It is okay to take that time for yourself, and you will be better for it, and the people in your life will be better for it, and the things you do will be more successful for it. And that's just do it, make time for it.
Nice. So, in talking about self care, what types of rituals do you like to do when you're writing? Whether it be grab some music or grab a coffee, or what are your rituals and time of day? When do you write?
Boy, so I love coffee.
You
I actually
say that like
enjoy
it's a bad thing.
it is a bad thing. I enjoy the flavor of coffee. It's not so much the way it makes me feel. I almost think I'm kind of immune to it. I drink so much of it. I at one point drink so much coffee I get heart palpitations. Just put that out there. So I'm working on it. I'm better. So I love coffee. I love having a nice espresso in the morning. I sit down. I always, I get through my workday first. But sometimes, like, I love to just put my headset on or put earplugs in. I like total silence. I can't any it's not, there's just days where, like, even the smallest, like, thing, smallest noise is just, I can't focus, can't get in the zone. So I do genuinely love total silence. But I also have moments where I need my epic playlist, and I put some really, like, just the kind of music you do a workout to on, and it pumps you up,
Okay.
it gets you through a scene. Or I love mood music. If you're writing a scene and it needs a certain mood, and you have that song in your head, and just play it in the background, and it gets you in the zone. And then there's also my cat. I'm actually on his schedule. He's not on my schedule. So during my writing day at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., he will come and he'll jump behind my computer and he'll push the top down, and then I'm obligated to get the pillow, and I get this giant pillow and I position it on my lap, and then he looks at me like he doesn't know it's okay, but we both know what's happening, and then he'll ease his way onto my arm, and then I have to write awkwardly for about a half an hour. So that is a ritual of mine. I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it helps my writing, but it's definitely a daily thing.
That's hilarious. I'm also on my dog's schedule when she wants out. It's the end of my writing for the morning, and so I
Oh
can
yeah.
relate to that.
Oh yeah.
So, when it comes to your storyline and how you envision things, do you ever picture it as a movie or as a TV series? If you had total control,
Oh boy,
which one
total
would you choose?
control. I guess you'd have to go with a TV series, and only because it's just such a disservice to so many good novels out there, the things they cut out to make something movie length. So at least in a TV adaptation, you have more freedom with the time. Obviously, they're known to be a little less as far as production value, but I don't know. I think the story's gotta to take precedent there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of people underestimate how much effort goes into those series. Like The Wheel of Time was kind of a victim of that, but it was doing so well. It was finally getting traction, and then they canceled it. I was so disappointed because it was
I
so much fun to watch
know.
it.
I know. It's hard, I think, for people who start with the books, right?
Yeah.
They're purists of the books. It is hard. It's always hard to watch a TV adaptation, no matter how well done it is. TV adaptations are notorious for steering storylines and changing characters, and you have to just watch it as for what it is. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings show. People were really like Lord of the Rings fans were not impressed with that and the, inconsistencies compared to Tolkien's works, and totally understandable. I've read Tolkien's works myself. I've read the Silmarillion a bunch of times, even though it's a really hard read. But if you just watched it for the story that it was, I thought it was really enjoyable. I'll be honest.
Right.
Like, you can't hold those TV adaptation characters to the literary characters. They're just never gonna.
Yeah, my husband and I both, I mean, we were young in the late 90s, early 2000s. We went through a fantasy drought on television and movies. You couldn't find anything. And then it started to emerge, and we're like, yeah, I don't care if it's a B flick. I want to
Right?
watch it.
Yes, yes.
So we were complaining, please don't get angry about it. It's all we have.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I remember growing up in the era of Xena, Warrior Princess, and
Yes.
Hercules, and then like adulthood hits, and you're suddenly there's nothing. I'm like, where's my epic shows? Like, I don't care about this doctor drama. Like, I want to see, where's the sword fighting? And
that's right. Where's the armor and the screaming? And
You know
anyway.
what? You know what will fill that void a little bit, though. If you ever go through a drought, I highly recommend you look into these fantasy movies like Lady Hawk.
I just watched that not that long ago.
Oh my gosh, yes. I don't know what it was about the 80s, but maybe it was the Dungeons and Dragons, like, because it was in its heyday. But there are some fantastic fantasy movies. I think it's called Krull.
Kull the Conqueror.
Krull, yes.
Yeah.
That one. Oh,
I knew as
gosh.
soon as you mentioned Lady Hawk that you were going to talk about Kull.
Oh, yeah. And then Red Sonja.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They're redoing
that. No, I
think
don't know
so.
how I feel about that.
Well, they've redone Conan a bunch of times, so I feel
That's true.
Feel they have to.
It's just a matter of time.
It's just a matter of time. So this has been a fantastic chat. I really had a lot of fun. But before we go, I'd love to see what the Daughter of the Void looks like so that everybody else can see what it looks like.
Let me see here. Here she is in all her glory.
And
we've got a little bit of a glare there.
Yeah, it looks amazing. And it is available where? Where can people find your book?
So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, bookshop.com. You can visit my website, hrcole.com, or you can visit the publisher's website, goldenscalespublishing.com. If you follow me on Instagram, all the links are in my bio. Our handle is Hidden Gems Books.
Your handle is Hidden Gems Books?
Yes.
Okay. And are you also on TikTok as well, or?
I'm not. I'm not techie. And I'm so overwhelmed just trying to like keep up with Instagram that I tried getting on Threads, and I tried Substack, and you know what? I was poorly prepared for what it really means to be on social media. I did not understand. I really didn't understand. I still to this day, like, it's kind of just like, I don't know. It's probably the most magical thing in our world. We can't fathom it. It's just this thing that happens. So yeah. So I just kind of let it do its thing, and I'm doing my best.
That's awesome. I can definitely agree that I was not prepared for the amount of work that it takes to be an author and trying to get your name out there in time to be able to, not launch to crickets. So I totally get it. So that being said, our podcast will be available on Monday, and we'll be able to listen to it loud and proud and share with all of the other readers out there inside the Instagram community and all of that. So thank you so much, Hope, for joining me tonight. I had a lot of fun chatting with you.
Yes, thank you too. I feel like we're two peas in a pod. We need to have a Dungeons and Dragons session or something. We're missing out. Virtual Dungeons and Dragons. That's where it's at next. That's what we need to do.
It sounds fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.